A few of us were very lucky to be close to Elvis. You know, very few, and it was a very, very great. You know, a lot of people say you were his best friend, Joe. I said, only Elvis can tell you I was his best friend. He was my best friend. You had to really know this man to understand him. There was nobody like him in the world. I'm telling you, nobody. And anybody that knew him will tell you that. I really feel honored that I was lucky to be his friend.
I had a group of my own in Memphis called the Starlight Wranglers, and which I had formed right after I got out of the Navy. We did one record at Sun. We sold maybe 10 or 12. One of those kind of deals, you know. But from all that, I got to be. Sam and I became good friends. And one day we were having coffee and his secretary was there, Miss Marion Keister was with us. And she asked Sam, said, "Did you ever talk to that boy that was in here about a year ago that cut the demo on or for his mother or something?" She gave the details, and he turned to Mary and says, "So get that guy, said, have you still got his telephone numbers?" "Yeah." Said, give it to Scotty, and he turned to me and said, "You call him and ask him to come over to your house and see what you think." He came over and that Sunday, and he sat around and he played and sang everything. Seemed like he knew every song in the world, but he didn't know how to play half of them. But he'd play along, and when he didn't know the chords, he just quit playing and keep singing. And then when Elvis left, I called Sam. I told Elvis, I said either I or Sam will probably be calling you if I come in the studio. I called Sam, and Sam said that I told him, I said, well, the boy seems like he knows all the songs. Being as young as he is, he's got a good voice. And Sam said, well, I'll call him and ask him to come in tomorrow night, which would have been Monday night, and said, can you and Bill come in and do a little background music? He said, I don't want the whole band, I just need a little noise behind him to see what he sounds like. And so we went down to the studio the next night, Monday night, and Elvis stood up and started playing his guitar and singing "That's All Right." And Bill started slapping his bass and playing along with him. I had never heard the song. Bill had never heard it. And I took the guitar and started playing and looking for something. We were just jamming. Door to the control room was open, and Sam stuck his head out and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We're just goofing around." And he said, "Well, do it a little more." Because the mics weren't on or anything. And he said, "Let me go turn the mics on," whatever. And we got on mic, went through it 2 or 3 times, and that was it.
I met Scotty, Bill, and Elvis at the Louisiana Hayride down in Shreveport, Louisiana. I had heard their records. They were playing it right, you know, in that one area. And one of the managers called me down one day and said, "Why don't you listen to this record?" So I went to his office and they played it. And I said, "How many guys they got playing in this band?" They said, "Just 3 guys." It sounded like 5 or 6 people with the echo and everything, you know. And I said, "Boy, that's awfully good." So anyway, they come in. So Scotty said, "Would you like to work with us tonight?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's why I'm here." So I said, "Let's go back in the dressing room and kind of talk about it." So Elvis got his guitar, and Scotty and Bill, and they just played, you know, a little bit. And I said, "Yeah, we could do that then." So we did it that night, and he'd come back in a few weeks later. We did it again. 2 or 3 weeks did he come back in and out. So that's how I basically got started. Just by accident, I happened to be there. You know, his voice was so unusual for that time period. And his clothes were unusual, and his dress with the peg pants, you know, and all that stuff, and stripes down his pants leg. And he's a good-looking kid, he's a good-looking guy. And I said, hey, this guy might do okay, who knows, you know, but he had that certain charisma about him that there's no way for him to miss, you know, no way.
He loved quartets. He loved the Jordanaires, the Blackwood Brothers, just the way he was raised, and used to go to all-night singings and such. And I think that's where he first met the Jordanaires, maybe, or he met them in Memphis. They was there on a show, I think.
Elvis used to listen to us sing on the Grand Ole Opry. And then in 1955, we were working with Eddie Arnold, and we went to the Ellis Auditorium in Memphis, and Elvis, as I said, had been hearing us sing on the Grand Ole Opry. He came back behind stage at the Ellis Auditorium in Memphis to meet us. He didn't come back behind me to Eddie Arnold, he came back behind me to Jordanaires. And he told us, this was in 1955, and he said, he said, right now I'm on a small label. He didn't say Sun, he said just a small label. But he said, if I ever get a major recording contract, I sure would like for you guys to work with me. We didn't think a thing about it, but when RCA signed him in January of 1956, he asked for us, and that was a relationship we had for almost 15 years.
Well, there'd been several people, I guess, been trying to buy his contract. And Parker came into the deal and set the whole thing up with RCA. And when they paid Sam the money. And this is when we went to RCA and cut the first record.
Heartbreak was done not too far from here, actually. And it was a kind of an old ex-church cathedral, like it was a small place, but that's what they used it as at one time. And there wasn't a so-called echo chambers like they have even in this studio. And they run some mic cords and mics down the hallway for echo on the record. That's how the sound of that. They wanted to get the old Sun sound on the new Heartbreak Hotel, but it just wasn't the same. It just never was the same. But they tried.
Heartbreak Hotel was the one that really brought him to the front. It was something different. It was just the way he did it was different. It wasn't much of a song. I was in the studio when he recorded it. Of course, the Jordanaires weren't not on it, but I was sitting there and listening to him. And if you'd heard the demo of the person that had made a little demo for him to learn it from, you thought, man, this ain't no hit. But when this guy got through with it, it was just a great recording. It's just the way he did things.
He was already a star when he came to RCA Victor, but it was more compacted into Southeast. Then the Jordanaires came with him and they did some other material, and all of a sudden it was overnight. It was overnight because that gave him, when he got on RCA, that told the world who he was. It was his first record that was formed and composite. The music wasn't as wild. Everything was right on there. Yeah, da 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 da, wow, wow. Nobody had ever heard a song like that before, and it was worth listening to. I think that's the one that put him up there. Presley was the first of my sessions. Oh, Lord have mercy, if that's not a scary thing, you know? So we're right here in the studio where we had that session. And Elvis came in the back door, and I didn't see him come in. I was talking to some guys. Well, this fellow walked up to me and put his hand out. He said, "I'm Elvis Presley." And I was shaking his hand, and I said, "I know who you are." And I said, "I'm Ray Walker." He says, "And I know who you are." He came over to me, he said, "Can you say no, 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 no?" I said, "Well, not to you. I get fired." He just laughed, and he said, "No," he said, "I want this next song. I just called Hunk of Love, Big Hunk of Love." He said, "I want you to just go," and he couldn't reach it, but he said, "I want you to do a pattern of no, 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 no." I said, "Well, what rhythm?" He said, "Kind of like the drum or the guitar." I said, "Okay." I said, "When do you want me to start?" He says, "At the top." So they, 1, 2, 3, no, 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 no. That's all I did through the whole song. No, 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 no. Well, he liked that. So then we did another song. I think I had a little bass something. And the 4th song we did on that session, he says, "I want to cut this song. I've been wanting to do this song. And it's Fools Such as I." And he said, "Can you sing with me down an octave?" Now, Elvis didn't know what an octave was. He just wanted it down under him. I says, "You mean the melody?" He said, "Yeah." So, okay. We started off as, "Now and then there's a fool such as I." Well, after 2 or 3 takes or so, he called me over on his microphone. And so we'd be singing, and the minute I would open my mouth to sing, he stuck his finger in my mouth, he stuck it in my ear, he pulled the back of my hair, and doing anything to try to break me up. And I stuck to it, and he said, "Boy, you're hard to make, you know."
None of us were actors. Bill wanted to be an actor. He really did. Bill could have been a good character actor. He really could. None of us had any big lines or anything. Bill had a few. Me and Scotty never did talk much on the, you know, on the scene itself. We would just happen to be in a lot of scenes. And Bill had a couple little acts that he did on Loving You was the picture. And he did a good job. He could have been a good actor, sure could.
I would just wish he could have got some real scripts and such later on. That when they found out they could make some money off of him, well, I guess, well, he went ahead and did it. I never will understand why. He just wouldn't put his foot down on management. Say, "I will not do this. Give me something." He did have a chance at, what was the movie? Star is Born. Yeah, they had that in mind for him. And then Parker would let him do it.
He always thought he was fat. He hated the word fat worse than anything, and he wasn't. I mean, we'd go to those rushes of the movies where he appeared, one or two he appeared in with a bathing suit on, and he said, "You know, get that fat so and so off the screen." We'd say, "Elvis, man, you're not fat." "Yeah, I'm fat too." Anyway, King Creole, we were out there 5 or 6 weeks to do our part in King Creole, and if you see it, bat your eye. No, we read it quite a bit, but. And it was a joy to be on the movie set with him. Of course, we did all the soundtracks for him, and we came up with Teddy Bear. Elvis didn't particularly like the songs. As a matter of fact, I've got to tell you this story. He didn't like Teddy. You know, everything today that you see that's connected with Elvis have got a teddy bear. After that movie came out, Loving You, which that song was in, came out, we went down to Memphis. We'd always go down right after the Christmas holidays to take his Christmas gift and his birthday, because his birthday is January the 8th. We'd take his Christmas gift and his birthday gift together. We were so shocked. We went down there that year after that movie came out, and the dining room was lined. There must have been 1,000 teddy bears in his dining room. And he said, "Man, all these damn teddy bears, what am I going to do with them? Why these people send me?" He didn't even like teddy bears, and they still have teddy bears connected with Elvis Presley when he didn't like stuffed teddy bears. and they would have to call a truck. They called the children's homes, Goodwill, whatever, and to have them haul them off. A lot of the movies don't have good songs in them. Every now and then there's a good song, but most of the movies don't have good songs in them. And he would say to us, what in the world can you do with a piece of junk like this? And we'd always say, as I said earlier, if we've got to do it, we've got to do it, so we'll come up with something. So after we had done that on one song, Elvis came over and sat down, and we were all sitting down talking, as we did on a lot of sessions. And he said, let's face it, if there just hadn't been a Jordanaires, I guess it just wouldn't have been a me. And we all looked with shock. Now, if I didn't have this in print before he passed away, people would think I was lying. But he said, no, he said, I'm serious. Because we all said, what? Are you kidding? He said, no, I'm very serious, guys. You guys took an interest in me when I wasn't interested in doing the songs. You took an interest in me when I didn't think I could do it. You helped me on the TV shows that I had to do. Everything that I've ever done, you guys have always encouraged me to do it and to do my best, and that's what I've always tried to do. So let's just lay the cards on the table. He said, I got to tell you, if there just hadn't been a Jordanaires, it might not have been a me. And I'll never forget that. I'll always treasure the fact that he said that to us.
Well, in 1958, I got drafted into the Army. And it just so happens, a very big famous entertainer at the same time got drafted a couple of weeks later after I did. And it just so happens we met while we were in the service. I was not in the entertainment business. I'm from Chicago. Had nothing to do with entertainment. Became friends with Elvis in the service, and he asked me to go to work for him, and I was with him from 1960 till he passed away. Well, I think how I ended up Elvis asking me to work for him. We went on a little trip to Paris, France while we were in the Army, and his father, Vernon, asked me if I would, he gave me the money to make sure I pay all the bills for the hotel and dinners and all that stuff. He said, hey, do me a favor, Joe, please bring back receipts. So that's what I did. So I paid all the bills, the hotel and nightclubs and fooling around. We were having a good time. And when he got back from the trip, I gave him a whole nice envelope with the whole list of what it was spent for and all the receipts. And I think it sort of impressed him. He didn't have anybody around him to do that for them before. So I think that's what they needed, somebody like me around. And I guess Elvis decided that he wanted to come with him. And I became his right-hand man, basically. And I took care of all of his personal business, everything. Telling people where to be, what time they had to be, where, and all that stuff. And I was basically, they used to call me the foreman of the group, and that was my title.
He was concerned about being forgotten while he was gone, and Colonel told him not to worry about it. They still had some stuff in the can they could release. And then he went into the Army, and the Army really got ticked at him because they wanted him to go into Special Forces and do music, and he said, no. I really would rather, I want to just be like everybody else. Well, they didn't like that. He came home for his mom's funeral, and of course that disturbed him. He got a furlough to come home to his mother's funeral. Then he went back to the Army, of course, and then he finished his 2 years and got out. He was so nervous about going out in public again. He felt like they'd forgotten him. Parker arranged the Frank Sinatra show at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. And when we got to Miami, I think he was pretty well convinced that they hadn't forgotten him, you know? And so we did a couple of, I think I got stung or something like that on the thing. It was teeny bopper stuff. And he and Sinatra did the thing, and he was right back up there again. No problem.
Sinatra really didn't want to do that show with Elvis. Sinatra was very hyper. Sinatra was very, he acted like he just resented the fact that we were there. He acted like we did that show in Miami, and he just wasn't extremely happy. And I think he felt that he was much above Elvis. And of course, Elvis had a problem also too. Elvis had just gotten out of the service. He didn't feel that he had gotten back into the groove yet of recording, didn't feel that he'd gotten back into the groove yet of singing. So all that didn't work too well together. That didn't really come out. That was a kind of bad experience for all of us. We saw it. I don't think the public saw it, but we saw it.
I think they did a good job together. I think Sinatra kind of got on his side after a while. That he wasn't sure about, how they would like each other, in other words. But they got on the show, and they were laughing and grinning and having a good time at rehearsals, and they all seemed like they really got along fine.
Well, in 1969, Colonel Parker signed a deal here in Las Vegas with Kirk Kerkorian for the International Hotel. And but before that, Elvis, we'd come here and hang out in Vegas. We loved Vegas in those days. We'd come here for a week and stay for 4 weeks. We'd go see all the big stars in town, all the shows, and just hung out. It was great. So Colonel apparently cut Elvis a deal at the International Hotel for him to play there for 5 years, twice a year, and one in January, one in August, 28 days. 2 shows a night straight. No days off, not like today where, you do 1 show a day and you're off for 3 days. 28 days straight, that 56 shows. Well, it was very, very exciting. Elvis hadn't been on stage for about 7 or 8 years doing a live performance. And here he is opening up here at this big, beautiful, biggest hotel in the world at that time. And this big show, biggest showroom in Las Vegas. And he was a nervous wreck. He was just he didn't know how would he be accepted. It'd been so long since he'd been on stage, and so it was very exciting. But Elvis was very, very nervous about it. And opening night, all these big stars were there, and Colonel Parker invited a lot of his friends from all over the world to come for the opening night. And Elvis he didn't know how it was going to be accepted. But it was so exciting for all of us. We were all nervous just as much as he was. He made us nervous. And then what happens? He walks on that stage. And a standing ovation for about 5-10 minutes. They went crazy, and he came out there and he got wound up, and forget it. It was the best show, unbelievable. People stood up after every song, and it was a whole new start again for Elvis again.
I was working for the International Hotel. Kirk Kerkorian had his staff working out of the Flamingo, so that when the International Hotel opened, we would all be familiar with one another, and we'd be a good functioning group. There was a meeting with the president of the hotel and Colonel Tom Parker, and my boss was invited, and I was asked to accompany him. It was a luncheon meeting, and I knew there was a definite pecking order, and I didn't want to sit in the wrong place, so I waited until everyone was seated at the luncheon. The only vacant seat was next to Colonel Tom Parker. When I was first told Elvis Presley is going to appear at the International, I was horrified. Even though I found Elvis very interesting in the 50s and in the 60s, I thought, but why him? Because immediately I remembered all the things that had been said about him. Well, I became a real Elvis fan when he sang the first note. In 1971, I was hired by RCA Records, and they needed a secretary who could travel. And I was chosen as a lucky person. But I'd known, Colonel, since working at the International Hotel. I was a secretary to the president there. And I was single, free to travel, and it was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was incredible.
My friend Larry Mahobrak had been doing some film work through the years, subbing for Floyd Kramer in some of Elvis's movies out west. And so we were both contemplating moving to the West Coast. And one day he said to me, they've contacted me to do this comeback thing. They're opening this new hotel out there. And it'd be a great, it was the International Hotel. It'd be a great opportunity to be seen by everyone in the business, because everybody is going to be coming. So I said, well, yeah. He said, so if you want me to put your name in the hat, I will. We're going to start auditioning musicians real soon. They're going to give me a call. So one Friday evening, I got a call from my friend Larry and said, we've been auditioning drummers for 2 or 3 weeks, and we've tried everybody in town, and we got one guy coming tomorrow night, and they asked me if I knew anybody. So when they finally asked me, I told him about you. So can you come tomorrow? So I slept my drums, get them in a taxi cab, fly them into LA, and take them to the studio where they're rehearsing, and we start playing a couple of songs. And immediately, he and I had this great rapport visually through eyes, watching each other. And the long and short of it is that I think that's what made the difference in him choosing me over the other guy at that particular time, was because, well, that's what he told me anyways, because he says, you watched everything I did. You know, I could wiggle my little finger and you'd do something to accent it or something, you know. And later on, when I talked to DJ about it, he used to say, hey, yeah, it was like playing for a stripper. You know, you catch every movement, you know, and that's, I instinctively did it, and it worked. You know?
The International had opened up, and I went in to talk to Mr. Shufi who was about getting the gig. You know, it was a major hotel in those days. Barbara was going to open it, and I talked to him, and he asked me. We talked. Bill Miller was the entertainment director. We talked, and we made our deal. So it comes the day of the first rehearsal with Elvis. They had been rehearsing in another room that was closed. We did the first part of the rehearsal. And on the first break, Joe Esposito combines us, Elvis would like to meet you. I was wondering, it's about time, I mean, you know. And he was impressed that I used the baton. And his first thing was this, Maestro, it's sounding pretty good, you know. And he called me Maestro from that day on, except on stage when he introduced me, but it was always Maestro. He was a fan of Mario Lanza, was on RCA then. So he was, and Elvis, till that moment, I don't know what kind of singer he was, but when we started popping some of those charts, I mean, he had chops up the kazoo. And the first time I said hello to him when we shook hands, there's a charisma there I cannot explain. I became a big, gigantic Elvis Presley.
Coming on through the years now, getting up to 1969, we've done all the movie things. Colonel got him a contract at the Hilton Hotel in Las Vegas, and they called us to go. But we didn't know what to do because we were running 8 out of the top 10. And we had 34 recording sessions already scheduled for the time that we would have been out there. But they didn't really tell Elvis why we weren't there. Now, we had just done in 1966 the How Great Thou Art album, and the Imperials sang with us on that, and he loved the Imperials too. So we contacted the Imperials, and they went out and did 3 seasons, 2 years with him, as I remember. And they got enough of that type of life, so they went on their way. And J.D. Sumner, they called the office to see about them, and they said, well, they're booked out, but I can bring my group if you'd like me to. Well, he liked the Stamps too, so he brought them out to do the shows.
I don't think he put as much heart. He didn't have a soul in his music as much after we quit. He always was hurt, deeply hurt. And I didn't realize till even later how much he was hurt because of Jordanaires and DJ and Scotty. See, Bill Black had passed away, but DJ and Scotty and Millie Kirk, all of us quit about the same time. Millie Kirkham worked a little bit longer, but he loved Millie Kirkham and he loved the Jordanaires. He loved DJ and Scotty, and we all quit about the same time. And he really felt that, you know, he didn't have brothers or sisters, and he always felt that we were his family. And I'll always regret that we had to do this because we had so much work here in Nashville, we didn't have any choice. We had to quit working with him because we couldn't continue working with him in Hollywood on the movies and in Vegas on his Vegas shows and work here in Nashville.
I started with the Stamps in February of 1971 was when we got and in about May of '71, we got the call from Charlie Hodge. The Imperials were leaving in the fall, and so in November of 1971, we joined Elvis Presley in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was quite an exciting event for us. My first impression was very interesting because we had worked and worked and worked to get his all of his background vocals just perfect. And this was our first shot at what you'd call the big time, so to speak. And so we worked and worked to get all these vocals just perfect. And we go in this rehearsal room at the hotel in Minneapolis. We went in there, and the band was there, and Charlie Hodge was there, and several other people were there that worked with Elvis, but Elvis wasn't there. We ran through 3 or 4 of the songs, and then we just stopped. And about a minute or 2 after we stopped and kind of relaxed, in walks this whole entourage of people. And right in the middle of them was Elvis. And he had a cane. He had shades on, with TCB shades on, you know, like he wore. And a lot of hair, a lot of hair. He stepped back, and the Sweet Inspirations were lined up right in front of us, like we did on the stage, and we were behind them. He stepped back out between 2 of the Sweet Inspirations, and he got back just about 10 feet, or maybe 8 feet, something like that. And when he got back there, he just reached up and grabbed his head, and he had a wig on. And he took this wig off and threw it at the foot of Estelle from the Sweet Inspirations, because he never wore a wig, didn't need one, but he just had one that day, just teasing. He threw it at the foot of Estelle, the Sweet Inspirations. She fell out. I mean, literally fell on the floor, laughing. It was the most hilarious introduction I've ever had to anybody, and that's how I met Elvis Presley. Hunk of Burning Love is one of the songs that Elvis came up with on the first recording session that we did with him. And I wasn't used to working with him in the studio yet, so didn't quite know how to act. So before we recorded, Charlie Hodge, who was his right-hand man, came to us, and he said, guys, he said, when Elvis records, he likes to do what he likes to do. And he said, if he points at you, he wants you to do something musically to impress him. He said that's what he usually, if he points at Burton, or if he points at Glenn Hardin or somebody, he wants them to do something, you know, a little something extra. So we were singing Hunk of Burning Love. We was doing the ending, and he's going, you know, Hunk of Burning Love. And he's doing hunk of burning love, hunk of burning love. And he pointed at me. And I didn't know what to do. I was petrified. And so when he pointed at me, he acted like he went kind of like this, and I thought, well, he wants me to sing something high. So I just screamed real high. I tried to do it on pitch, of course, but I screamed real high. He said, that's it. So for the next 3 hours, we went through that song and did that ending over and over and over until we got it just like he wanted it. And I was hoarse when I got done. And it all happened in the studio at RCA Victor in Hollywood, California.
I believe it was September of '71. He came off of a tour and came here and worked in RCAA, the big studio. Well, during that session, I was going back to the restroom, and he was just coming from the restroom, and I said, Elvis, I'm sorry we're not with you. It was just our families. I said, I had a house. He said, hey, don't you apologize. He said, I wish I had that much reason to stay home. That's what he told me.
I love the one where it really told the story of his life. I'm caught in a trap and I can't get out. Because Elvis was really caught in a trap and he couldn't get out. I don't think the public knew that, but he was caught in a trap with the Colonel, and he couldn't get out of that. And he could have, if he'd just been mean. Elvis was not mean-natured. He just wouldn't stand on his feet and demand what he wanted and what way it should have been.
Well, I first met Colonel Parker in Nashville. When we got out of the service, Elvis had to go to a recording session in Nashville. And that's the first time I met Colonel Parker. Now, he didn't know me from Adam. And all these other people are Southern boys and gentlemen and stuff like that. And I'm a Yankee from Chicago and being Italian. So I don't think he knew what to expect. He didn't know me that well, and he's, you know, a little standoffish, and you know, we talked low and introduced and stuff like that. I really didn't get to know him for a while. And later on, as life went on, and we were traveling different places, different meetings and stuff like that, we became very good friends. I got along great with him. I think he was a very, very smart man. Only one Colonel Tom Parker in this life. And I think it was meant to be that they became partners together, Colonel Parker and Elvis. I mean, he handled Elvis better than any other manager could have ever handled when an artist first comes out. Of course, he was a human being too. He made mistakes. We all make mistakes. I don't care who you are. President of the United States makes mistakes. So people have to realize that. But newspapers and writers have a tendency to focus on the mistake and not all the good parts, because people like to hear that stuff. But people say to me, wasn't he a tough person? Yeah, he was very tough. But a very nice, down-to-earth man, very charitable man, did a lot of things for charities and organizations, loved kids, loved animals, but people never hear about that. So I got along great with him. Him and I became very, very good friends.
We worked with the Colonel long before we ever met Elvis. We worked with Eddie Arnold, and the Colonel was Eddie Arnold's manager. The Colonel was a good friend of mine. He was just sweet and nice to me, always. He called me Gordon. Come on, he always called me Gordon. But he was always nice to me, but there wasn't any love between he and Elvis. And I've always regretted the fact that, you know, had there just been a little love between the two of them, the situation might have been different.
Number one, Elvis never did anything he did not want to do. If he didn't want to go on the road, he didn't go on the road. It makes me very sad that there are people who try to make Elvis a weakling that Colonel controlled, and there could be nothing farther from the truth. Elvis was his own person, and Colonel's job was to make what Elvis wanted happen, and that's what he tried to do. They were a partnership, and there was a very definite line in their work. Colonel took care of the business. Elvis took care of the creative part. Elvis was not interested in the business end. One of the first meetings in Los Angeles, there were movie producers there, the head of the studio, William Morris, president. Colonel said, Elvis, you've got to go to this meeting with you. I think you should learn something about the business. Well, after about 10 minutes, Elvis said, excuse me, please, I need to use the restroom. And he never came back. They found him a couple blocks away watching a movie in a movie theater all by himself. So that pretty much set the trend for the whole thing.
I don't know how he got the gig, to tell you the truth. You know, if Elvis had had a manager that was really business savvy, and not just a carnival kind of guy, but really a classy business person. I mean, who knows what all he could have done or been part of or created. I mean, Colonel Parker was a carny, you know, and I don't know what you know about that lifestyle and those kind of people, but that's kind of how he was, and he was certainly not generous to us, the singers and the crew and the band and that kind of thing. Was pretty cheap to us. You know, I remember one time we happened to be touring, and it was Thanksgiving. We were doing a show on Thanksgiving Day, and we were not able to be at home with our family and friends and things. And he came on. We were on a bus that was taking us from the plane to the venue, and we were all sitting there, and came on the bus and gave us all $10 to buy our Thanksgiving meal with, you know. So that kind of says it all right there, you know. You can read into that whatever you want to.
All I know about the Colonel is when it comes to business, he was always very fair to us. He was straight above board and all of that. I didn't agree with him personally, because he's one of those kind of guys that you could be in the middle of the tour and walking down a hotel you know, down the hallway in the hotel, and you get up to him and you kind of look over and if he's going to look at you or not, and he'd just walk right on by. Wouldn't he say hello? So I can count on my hands the times that he said hello to me. Or you might see him backstage. One night he grabbed me and he was next to a payphone. He was calling his wife, saying, "Now I want you to talk to Ronnie Tutt. Ronnie's got a snare drum here, Ronnie. We're backstage. I want you to know that I'm not out just partying, having a good time." You know, just off the wall stuff, you know. So I don't think he really understood Elvis's whole thing. I don't think, no matter how influential he was in helping him get to that point, he didn't understand him once he had developed. That's kind of the sad part of it. I think he should have, in all wisdom and in all respect, I think he should have, and there was talk about it, sold his contract over to Tom Hewlett and Jerry Weintraub, excuse me, which was Management 3.
Colonel and one of his staff were driving from Palm Springs, where Colonel's wife was staying with her nurses, back into Los Angeles because Colonel had to go to the office on Monday morning. It was Sunday afternoon, and they turned on the radio, and President Nixon was speaking from the Wall of China. He had opened negotiations with China. And Colonel said, "You know, this is making history. This is incredible. Everyone around the world is watching this." And then he said, "Elvis is a worldwide star. He should be the first to sing via satellite so that everyone can see him at the same time." This will be the biggest audience he ever has.
So this was a big, big challenge for Elvis. I mean, doing a live performance, you had to be live, and you come on at a certain time, and it cuts you off at a certain time. So you got to finish the show within that 58 minutes, wherever it is. And it was a big challenge. But you know, it was a great challenge for him. He took the challenge. If you saw the show, he looked so handsome, good looking. He got himself in great shape for that. And he did that show just like, and we all figured he'd be a nervous wreck. He went out there and just did it. And he did a great job, and he was right on the moment when it was supposed to be over with. He finished the show. It was a very, very exciting moment for all of us. I mean, we didn't know what to expect and how he was going to do it, and he did it. He did it right the way it was, as we know. A billion people around the world seen him live.
It was so amazing because we had to be right on. I mean, just right straight on. And we did this show for about a little better than an hour, which went around the world. And then afterwards, we stayed and we did some other songs that they edited into the special that they put here in the United States on the network, you know, like, I don't know, about a month later or something like that. And it was quite an experience.
Hawaii was a thrill. Hawaii was a fantastic thrill. I said to the band just before we started, Marty Pacetto was counting it down. I said, when I drop my hands, I said, this is the first time this first note is going to go. I mean, we're going all over the world, you know, with a picture and a note, and those guys just played. That show was, my guys were tight. Everybody was tight.
We never really quite understood the importance of what we were doing until later on, and they told us how many countries with the percentage of TV sets were turned on and this and that, and it was boggling. And we'd probably been a lot more nervous if we'd really understood, but it was a live simulcast of the show that we did, you know. And it was a special time because we had a week before and with not a whole lot of rehearsing, because there again, he wanted it to be spontaneous, but we had time to hang out and relax, get in the aloha mood.
Well, I thought it was great. I missed it. That was their last tour, the last thing they had they did that show in Hawaii. And then I joined. I got the job with Stamps right after they came back from Hawaii doing that show. But I thought it was great. It was, and it was very representative, I thought, of who he was and what he does. I joined the Stamps. This was in 1974 when I got the call to come and audition and got the job. Prior to going to Vegas, which was our first show and my first meeting with him, we were out touring, doing gospel shows, singing in auditoriums and churches and wherever the group was booked. And then we go to Vegas. So we're in Vegas, and first day there, and Ed comes to me and said, "Listen, at 6 o'clock we've got to go upstairs to the main ballroom upstairs at the Hilton there in Vegas, and we're going to have a rehearsal before we do the show." So this was going to be my first meeting, and so I look at Ed and I said, "Ed, what do you all normally wear when you rehearse?" Because I mean, I'm green, I don't know anything. He said, "Oh, you're fine. Just wear what you got." Well, what I had on was, for whatever reason, there was this fad going around where people were wearing, even girls were wearing bib overalls, you know, the farmer type overalls, and they were like the cool thing to do. So that's what I was wearing, and I thought I was really hip and cool, you know. So I'm up, we finally get up to rehearsal, and all the band, our group and Sweet Inspirations, and everybody's there that's connected with the show. And I'm standing there, I'm scared to death really, because I don't know what to expect. And in a few minutes, these double doors that come into the room, they just come flying open. And then comes Elvis with 3 bodyguards on each side, you know, and just comes and makes this huge entrance, and I'm going, wow. And it just blew me away. And so I'm standing there just amazed, and he's going around the room speaking to everybody, hugging them, you know, "How you doing? It's good to see you again," because it's been, like I said, several months. And so I'm standing there with the Stamps, with Ed, and Elvis finally makes it around to where we are. And he grabs Ed and gives him a big old hug, you know, and I'm standing there watching that. And then Ed goes, "E, I want you to meet our new bass singer." And he kind of, "How you doing?" kind of nods at me. And then he takes Ed, he's still got his arm around Ed's neck, and he kind of pulls him over just about 3 feet away from me and says where I can hear him, he says, "Ed, where in the hell did you get the effing farmer?" I mean, just like that, and I heard every word of it. "Where did you get the effing farmer?" And then he goes around the rest of the room pointing me out to everybody else, you know, and of course he's laughing, and so everybody's gonna laugh, you know. And I was the laughing stock of the entire tour, man. And I felt about that big. And I just knew that I was going to be on the next plane out of there, that I had made such a bad impression. What I didn't know, and what they failed to tell me, was he actually hated overalls and anything like that, because when he was a kid, any of the pictures you see when he was a small kid, that's what he's wearing. And he vowed and declared he would never wear jeans or overalls. And if you think about it, you never saw him in any jeans or anything like that. But then a few days after that, we all went out to the airport one night after the show just to see his new plane. He'd gotten this big plane, Lisa Marie. That's what he called the plane. And so we were all sitting on the plane in the middle of the night, not going anywhere, just sitting there. And I'm up at the front, and Elvis is way back in the back where he had a big conference-like table. He's sitting back in his chair, and I don't know, I guess he sensed that I was, you know, really not feeling well. And so then in front of everybody, I can't remember what he said, but he yelled up to the front of the plane and said, "Hey, you know, welcome, man, you're doing a good job," this kind of deal, and really calmed the waters for me. And from that point on, you know, I began to settle in. So, but I'll never forget that, and I still have those overalls. I couldn't throw them away. It was like, you know, I want to keep these things for just the nostalgia of it. But man, sure wish I'd have never worn them.
No one expects an addiction to happen. But once you get into it, you're stuck. You're just stuck. The pills or whatever it is take over. It can be eating, it can be smoking, it can be drinking. He was not a drinker. But you always feel you can handle it. And we always felt Elvis could handle it. Looking back, we can see where he was deteriorating. But at the time, when you see everyone daily, see someone daily, you don't notice the deterioration. And we all believed he was an awesome person. He said he could handle it. Not that every effort wasn't made to stop it. Everyone who was with him and was with Colonel took a turn trying. But unless someone wants to stop an addiction, it's not going to stop. And there were no Betty Ford clinics then. There were no clinics for this, to handle this kind of thing. A person just had to do it on their own. And that's tough, and in his case, it turned out to be impossible.
I think he went through, the divorce thing and a lot of the prescription things, the drug thing had to affect his moods. I could see too many mood swings, too many changes from night to night for it not to affect how he performed. But we did our best to be there to support, no matter what kind of mood he was in, to try to level it out, so to speak.
I saw him when he was obviously on whatever he was taking, the pills, and he was on stage and he was slurring his words and not completely with it. But I can only think of maybe a couple of times in touring, a couple of shows where I felt like, boy, I wish he wasn't singing tonight. He's not himself, and it was obvious. But the rest of the time, and we literally did hundreds of shows between Vegas and touring. I mean, hundreds of shows. He was pretty much right on every night.
I get a lot of questions about Elvis. We all think he was going to die because he was having his problems. I said, no. I never thought he would die the way he did. I really didn't. We always had a feeling that he was going to wake up one day and say, I got to clean myself up. What am I doing to myself? And we were always waiting for that to happen because we knew he could do it if he wanted to. We really did. And as we know, it didn't happen. So it was tough for everybody. And there's all these stories about why we didn't do something. We couldn't do a darn thing, no matter what anybody tells you. You can't do something. You can't make him go and clean himself up. He's a grown man. He has to do it himself. And so when that happened, when he passed away on August 16, 1977, never, ever expected it. It was a shock for all of us. And I hear a lot of people say, well, now didn't you realize it? No, we didn't realize it. You weren't there, so you wouldn't know. That's upsetting, yeah.
Colonel was devastated. He was watching his best friend disappear before his eyes. We were on the road and he'd gone upstairs to see Elvis. And he came down and he had tears. He said, I've lost him. This is not the man I knew as Elvis. What are we going to do? And he didn't know. He tried. In fact, one of the reasons that they split when they did very briefly was because Colonel and Vernon, Elvis' father, talked about it, and Colonel said, if Elvis isn't on the road, maybe then we can get him to deal with this. But it didn't work, didn't it?
Well, August 16th, we were getting ready to go on tour that. We were supposed to go to Portland, Maine to do a show the next night. So we were all there. I was there at the house getting ready to set things up, with pilots and everybody getting ready to leave that afternoon. And that's when the phone call came from upstairs. And I went upstairs and called the ambulance and went to the hospital with him. And that was it. He left us. He left. It was very, very tough, very hard, and it was just. It took me about 3 months to realize he was gone, that he was not coming back.
Well, I was at home. I had just gotten home. I'd been in San Francisco, the Bay Area. I'd been doing a recording project with Jerry Garcia, the band, that whole summer. And I got home on a Friday night, and we were booked to start a tour on the following Monday. The show plane was going to go out on Saturday and arrive in Maine. But I had not been in my own bed, and I had a brand new son, and I just wanted to be in my own home for a couple of nights. So I was going to go out commercial and fly in Sunday. So I wasn't on the show plane. But we got a call Saturday morning. My wife's mother called us up and said, "You're not going to believe this, you know. Listen to the radio," and so we did. And so I immediately called Graceland. I had his private number and called him, and Felton Jarvis picked up the phone, and all I said was, "Felton, is it true?" He said, "Yeah, Ronnie, it is." So that's all I had to hear. You know?
I wasn't going to make the trip. I was going to join the trip 2 days later because Ann Margaret was one of my clients. And my deal with Hilton that I would do the headliners. So Marty, the trombone player, was going to cover me for 2 days. We had used the same band, you know, the same horn players by Pat, all the regular guys. So for 2 days, and I was going to join the tour after I got Ann open. Then I'd have another conductor come in and cover in after because the opening is where in night is where you make a lot of changes. Next day you try your fixes, and then you can do whatever you got to do. So I went to the airport and got the guys on the airplane, and I was going back, and my wife and I was married to Corky at the time. I had to go in. I needed a new bow tie. I was opening on. I needed a bow tie for the tux because it was the band wore tuxedos when Ann. So I go into a shop at Boulevard Mall, and I'm getting. I hear one girl say to the other one, "Isn't that terrible about Elvis?" And I'm standing there, and I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Oh, they found him dead this morning." Well, I mean, I just put 14 guys on an airplane. So I went over to call the hotel. I couldn't even get through. Bruce Banky was in the publicity department. I finally got Bruce. I said, he says, "It's true." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I don't have all the." He said, "But it's true." So I went back, and it was crazy at the hotel. I mean, it was just crazy at the hotel.
When we found out that he had passed away, it was really strange because we toured. We'd go out and do maybe 10 dates, a couple of weeks tour. Then we'd be off for a month, and then we'd go back, or maybe 2 months, and then we'd go back and do another tour. And we were at the airport here in Nashville. The plane, they had just called us that the plane was about 30 minutes out. We were all standing, there was a private plane that was coming to pick us up. We were all standing in the terminal, waiting for the plane to pick us up, to take us up to Portland, Maine, where we were going to start another tour. And we were just all happy and excited and glad to be working again. And then before the plane made it, Felton Jarvis, who was our kind of road manager, and he was producing Elvis at the time, got a call and came over to us and said, with a real strange look on his face, but he said, "Guys, everybody go home, the tour's canceled." And that's all he said. "Go home, the tour has been canceled." And so we're going, wow, wonder what happened. We're thinking maybe something happened to Vernon, you know, his dad, or he's sick or whatever. And I go out and get in my car, and I'm driving home, and I hear it on the radio. I hear it on the radio that he was found dead. I don't know why Felton felt like he couldn't tell us. I don't know, maybe he didn't know, or maybe he just didn't want to tell us until he knew more of the story and feel like he was, maybe tell us something wrong or whatever. But that hurt, that I found out on the radio that he had passed away.
Colonel and his staff, which included me, were in Portland, Maine, when Colonel got the phone call that Elvis had been taken to the hospital. And then the next call said he was gone. And we went into shock, basically. We couldn't believe it. This was totally unexpected. I guess we always expected him to be immortal. And in a sense, he still is. So, it still comes right back, When you think about it, you go right back to where we were. And it changed our lives totally. We were never the same.
I think Elvis's music will stand more, I hope no one gets angry with me about this, but I think it'll stand more than anybody else's that I've ever heard. And that, Frank Sinatra I think is great, and I think his music stands the test of time. Great. Dean Martin, those people are terrific. But I'm not so sure but what Elvis might not stand the test of time more than even those men who are, they're giants in the field of music. And I'm not so sure but what he might not hang on longer even than they do.
No, he wasn't overrated by no means. He didn't like to be called a king, but still he was the #1 guy, and he still is. 'Cause I just got back from Denmark and Sweden, and those people over there they still love Elvis. Everywhere you go, they love Elvis. After all these years, he's passed away.
He was just a master. He was just great. He was different. He had what the public wanted. He had a beautiful look about him. But the most thing that it was so great about him was he was sincere about everything he did. He loved everything he did. He loved the songs he did. He loved the words of the song. Every word of every song meant something to him. And he just made the best out of any situation.
I think Elvis Presley's music will be here forever. And I don't think Elvis ever realized how much appeal he did have in this world to people. And look at, almost 29 years now he's been gone. And he's bigger than ever. Here we are doing an interview about him, and this guy's been dead 28 years. I mean, think of another star that happened to. None. Never ever will be. Never be another Elvis Presley.
One of a kind. Absolutely one of a kind. He was a stylist. I mean, he started a whole new kind of music, and he connected with the people unbelievably. He sang without any tricks and gimmicks, and sing it and make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. I don't know. There's not many singers that can do that.
Who was it that said before Elvis there was nothing? I don't know about that, but he was the original guy that started this, When you're dealing with Elvis, you're dealing with the original cast. This is not an off-Broadway thing that happened, There's a lot of people running around doing Elvis, but when you've been with the original cast, they're not even close. I don't care what they say, they're not close. The music, yeah, the music's good. But it's Elvis that stands the test of time. He's the original cast, like I said earlier. There's nothing off-Broadway about Elvis Presley.
Elvis, I think, was ahead of his time from this standpoint. He gave nearly everybody in the world the idea they could sing, because he didn't sound too good to them when he started. But he dared to do it. He dared to step out front and say, look how bad I am, or look how good I am. This is me. I got a living ahead of me. I want to do this. This is my dream. This is my goal, and I'm going to get there. He dared to do it. And that's the big thing. The failures in my life are because I didn't dare to do it.
I don't know of another entertainer who is remembered so well. And I think there is something that appeals to the young people because Elvis had the courage to be different. He wore different clothes, he wore a different hairstyle, he sang different music, and everyone's criticism didn't stop him from doing what he thought was the right thing for him. There aren't many people who are capable of doing that.
Oh, take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. Take my hand, take my